When a ruthless gang of outlaws invades the peaceful farm of an aging veteran, they have no idea they've just walked into the kill zone of one of the deadliest Delta Force commanders in military history. Will these trespassers survive the night when they realize the quiet farmer they're threatening has been trained to eliminate enemies with lethal precision? The sound of engines woke me before sunrise. My eyes snapped open in the darkness of my bedroom. 3 trucks, maybe more, rumbling up my long dirt driveway. Nobody visits at this hour unless they're looking for trouble. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent on the wooden floor. My body might be older now, but 15 years in Delta Force taught me to move without making a sound. I grabbed my jeans and pulled them on, listening as the vehicle stopped near my barn. Car door slammed. Men's voices carried through the cool morning air. I counted 6, maybe 7 different voices. None of them belonged to anyone I knew. My farmhouse sat on 80 acres of land I'd bought after leaving the military. A quiet place where I could put the war behind me. Or at least that's what I told myself. The truth was I never truly left combat behind. I just brought it home with me. I moved to the window and peered through the curtains. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the first pale light revealed 3 pickup trucks and a larger vehicle that looked like a panel van. 7 men gathered in my yard, passing around what looked like a hand-drawn map of my property. This wasn't a random stop. They'd come here on purpose. I reached under my bed and pulled out my go bag, always packed, always ready. Old habits die hard. Inside was a secure phone, a first aid kit, and my service pistol. I checked the magazine and chambered around, the familiar action bringing a strange comfort. My dogs, Zeus and Apollo, German shepherds I trained myself, waited silently at the bedroom door. They'd been trained not to bark unless I gave the command. Their ears were perked, bodies tense. They sensed a danger too. I whispered, "Guard," and they immediately took positions on either side of the door. Another military habit: always have a backup plan. From downstairs came the sound of breaking glass. They weren't even trying to be quiet. These weren't professionals, but that didn't make them any less dangerous. I moved to the top of the stairs, keeping low. Through the railing, I could see 2 men entering through my kitchen window. One was tall and lanky, the other shorter but muscular. Both carried handguns. "Find the old man," the shorter one said. "Vince wants to talk to him before we start setting up." The taller one laughed. "What if he gives us trouble? Then we give him trouble right back." But Vince said no killing unless necessary. "We need this place intact." I weighed my options. I could take these 2 down easily, but there were at least 5 more outside, and I still didn't know what they wanted. Information first, action second, another lesson from my Delta days. I retreated to my bedroom, slipped the gun into my waistband at the small of my back, and put on a flannel shirt to cover it. Then I called Zeus and Apollo to heel and walked downstairs, making sure to let the 3rd step creak. No point in surprising them. "Who's there?" I called out, playing the role of confused old farmer. "I've called the sheriff already." The kitchen went silent. Then the shorter man stepped into view, gun pointed at my chest. "You Jackson Riley?" he asked. I nodded slowly, keeping my hands visible. "This is private property. You're trespassing." He grinned, revealing a gold tooth. "Not anymore. This place belongs to the Raven Syndicate now." The name meant nothing to me, but his attitude told me everything I needed to know. Another criminal organization, thinking they could take what wasn't theirs. I'd seen their type before, from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. "I think there's been a mistake," I said, taking another step down. Zeus and Apollo stayed at my heels, waiting for commands. "This land is mine, paid for in full." The front door opened, and a tall man with a scarred face entered. He wore a black leather jacket with a raven emblem stitched on the shoulder. The others treated him with immediate deference. The leader then, "Mr. Riley," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "I'm Vincent Mercer. My friends call me Vince." He gestured around. "Sorry about the early wake-up call, but we've got a tight schedule to keep." I studied him carefully. Military bearing, though not special forces. Regular army, maybe. The way he scanned the room, checking corners and exits, he'd seen combat. "What do you want?" I asked, continuing my slow descent down the stairs. "Your farm has exactly what we need," Vince said. "Remote location, Good sight lines, sturdy buildings. Perfect for our operation. And what operation is that? He smiled. Let's just say we're in the distribution business. We'll be bringing in some product later today. You can stay and help, or you can leave. Your choice. Drug runners. They wanted my farm for a distribution hub, and they weren't giving me a choice, despite Vince's words. I'm not interested, I said firmly. You need to leave. Now. Vince sighed as if disappointed. Wrong answer, old-timer. He nodded to the man beside him, who raised his gun and fired. The bullet hit the wall beside my head, showering me with splinters. My dogs growled but held position. Next one goes between your eyes, Vince said calmly. Now let's try again. We're using your farm. You can stay alive and helpful, or you can stay dead. Your choice. I felt something shift inside me, a familiar coldness settling in my chest. I'd spent years trying to leave Commander Jackson, Riley behind, to be just a farmer. But these men had no idea who they were threatening, no idea what I was capable of. I looked at Vince, allowing him to see just a glimpse of the real me. You've made a mistake coming here. He laughed. I don't think so. Cruz, Diesel, search the house. Tanner, check the barn. The rest of you, start unloading the equipment. As they moved to follow his orders, I noticed a small detail I'd missed before. On Vince's wrist was a tattoo. Not the Raven symbol, but military coordinates. Familiar ones. Kandahar province. Maybe this wasn't as random as I thought. Maybe they knew exactly who I was. And if that was true, what else did they know about me? The sun crept above the horizon as Vince's men spread throughout my property. Two stayed with me in the kitchen, guns trained on my chest. I sat at my table, hands flat on the wood, looking like a cooperative old man. Inside, I was mapping out every possible scenario, every exit route, every weapon within reach. Cruz, the tall, lanky one, returned from upstairs. Nothing unusual up there, boss. Just typical old man stuff. I hid my smile. He'd missed the false bottom in my closet, the weapons cache in the bathroom vent, the secure satellite phone taped under my dresser. Amateurs. Vince straddled a chair across from me, his scarred face thoughtful. You know, Riley, most people will be panicking right now. I'm not most people, I replied, keeping my voice steady. No, you're not, he agreed. Retired, living alone on a farm. No wife, no family visiting. Perfect isolation. The way he said it made me think he'd been watching me, studying my routines. This wasn't a random target after all. What do you really want? I asked. I told you. Your farm is perfect for our needs. And I'm supposed to believe you picked my place by accident? Something flashed in his eyes. A brief moment of calculation. Does it matter? You're in no position to ask questions. A younger man burst through the door, excitement on his face. Vince, you got to see what I found in the barn. Vince frowned at the interruption. What is it, Tanner? There's a hidden room behind the back wall, locked up tight. And check this out. He held up a small metal object. My heart sank. It was a challenge coin from my old unit, stamped with the Delta Force insignia. I dropped it last week while I was repairing a tractor. Careless mistake. Vince took the coin, examined it, then looked at me with new interest. Military man, huh? What branch? Army, I said simply. No point lying about what they'd already discovered. Rank, just a sergeant. Nothing special. Vince tossed the coin onto the table. Funny, I've never seen just a sergeant with a Delta Force coin. I shrugged. Found it at a pawn shop. Thought looked cool. Vince didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. But he played along. Diesel, go help Tanner break into that room in the barn. Cruz, get the satellite systems set up. We need to be operational by noon. As I left, I noticed something I'd missed before. Cruz was wearing a communication earpiece. Not just any earpiece, but military grade. The kind used by special operations teams. These weren't ordinary drug runners. You were military too, I said to Vince, not asking a question, but stating a fact. He nodded. 82nd Airborne. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. Honorable discharge? His face hardened. Not exactly. I understood then. He was one of those good soldiers who came home broken, then turned their skills to crime when the system failed them. I'd seen it happen too many times. Whatever you're planning, I said quietly, it's not too late to walk away. Vince laughed. Always the hero, aren't you, Riley? Trying to save even the bad guys. The way he said it raised the hairs on my neck. He knew me. Not just my name, but my reputation. This wasn't adding up. Outside, I heard more vehicles arriving. Through the window, I saw 2 more trucks pulling up, men unloading heavy equipment. Some kind of electronic gear, communications equipment. This wasn't a simple drug operation. You're not drug runners, I said. Vince smiled. Finally catching up, old man? No, we're not. The Raven Syndicate is much more ambitious. A massive man entered the kitchen, his arms covered in tattoos. Perimeter secure, boss. No neighbors for miles, just like you said. But that wasn't true. My nearest neighbor, Sarah, lived just over the hill. Her house wasn't visible from mine, but it was less than a mile away. They hadn't done their research properly. That was a mistake I could use. Good work, Hector, Vince said. Take Riley here to the barn. Let's see what he knows about that hidden room. Hector yanked me to my feet. I let him manhandle me, playing the cooperative prisoner. My dogs growled, but stayed in place as I trained them. Call off your mutts, Hector growled, pressing a gun to my head. I whistled once, and Zeus and Apollo retreated to their corner beds. They'd stay there until I called them. Another advantage these men didn't know about. As Hector pushed me toward the door, I glanced at my kitchen counter. The third cabinet from the left had false bottom. Inside was a panic button that would alert my old team, men who'd promised to come running if I ever needed them. Men who lived less than 30 minutes away. I needed to get back to that button. Outside, the farm was transforming. Men were setting up satellite equipment, surveillance cameras, weapon caches. This was a military operation, not a criminal one. Impressive setup, I said as Hector marched me toward the barn. What's the mission? He grunted, shoving me forward. Shut up and walk. In the barn, Tanner and Diesel were trying to break into my hidden room. They found the door but couldn't get past the lock, a reinforced steel door that would take more than brute force to open. Your boyfriend's here, Tanner joked as we entered. Diesel turned, wiping sweat from his brow. We can't get in, boss. It's some kind of military-grade lock. Vince had followed us in. He pulled out a pistol and pointed it at my knee. Open it. I looked at the door, then back at him. I can't. Lost the key years ago. The lie came easily. The key was actually on a chain around my neck, hidden under my shirt. But what they didn't know was that the room wasn't just a storage space. It was a panic room, and inside was enough firepower to take down everyone on my property. I don't believe you, Vince said, his finger tightening on the trigger. Believe what you want, I replied. But shooting me won't open that door. Vince stared at me for a long moment, then lowered his gun. Fine. Diesel, get the explosives. We'll blow it open. My heart raced. If they use explosives, they might damage the weapons inside. But more importantly, they'd reveal my biggest secret. That Jackson Riley wasn't just any Delta Force operator. I was the commander of the most decorated unit in recent history. A unit that had made powerful enemies. Enemies like the Raven Syndicate. Suddenly, it all made sense. The way Vince talked, the military precision of this operation. This wasn't about using my farm. This was about me. You knew who I was all along, I said quietly, so only Vince could hear. This isn't about my farm. It's about what happened in Kandahar. Vince's eyes narrowed. Maybe you're not as slow as you look, Commander Riley. The use of my rank confirmed it. This was personal, and now I knew just how dangerous my situation really was. What happened in Kandahar was classified. Only a handful of people knew the truth. If Vince knew about it, then this wasn't just a criminal operation. It was revenge. The explosion rocked the barn, sending dust and splinters flying everywhere. My ears rang as smoke filled the air. I'd braced for it, but Vince and his men hadn't expected the force of the blast. They were thrown off balance, coughing and cursing. Through the haze, I could see my hidden room was now exposed. The steel door hung from one hinge, revealing what was inside. But it wasn't weapons they saw. It was photographs. Hundreds of them, covering the walls. My old team. The missions. The faces of men who'd trusted me with their lives. What the hell? Diesel muttered, stepping forward to look. I used their confusion, twisting free from Hector's grip and driving my elbow into his stomach. He doubled over, and I grabbed his gun, but before I could use it, Vince had his weapon pointed at my head. Don't, he warned. You're outnumbered and outgunned. I froze, weighing my options. 6 armed men. No clear exit. My dogs were still in the house. I lowered the gun slowly. Smart move, Vince said, nodding to Tanner, who wrenched the weapon from my hand. Seems you haven't lost all your tactical sense, Commander. He emphasized my rank, making it clear he knew exactly who I was dealing with. But there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. Not just hatred, something deeper. You've gone to a lot of trouble to find me, I said, watching as Cruz and Diesel entered the hidden room. Why not just put a bullet in my head and be done with it? Vince smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Because that would be too easy, too quick. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You don't even remember me, do you? I studied his face. The scar running from his right eye to his jaw. The cold blue eyes. Nothing familiar. Should I? I asked. His face hardened. Kandahar Province. Operation Midnight Shield. 5 years ago. The names hit me like a physical blow. Operation Midnight Shield had been one of my last missions. A hostage extraction gone wrong. We'd lost 3 good men that day. You weren't there, I said, certain of it. I knew every man on that operation. No, Vince agreed. But my brother was. He pulled out a worn photograph from his pocket and held it up. A young soldier in army fatigues. Staff Sergeant James Mercer. One of the hostages we'd failed to save. James was undercover. Vince continued, his voice tight with controlled rage. Deep cover in the Taliban. 2 years of work. And then your team came crashing in, blew his cover sky high. He died because of your botched rescue mission. My mind raced back. The intelligence we'd received had said all the hostages were American aid workers. There'd been no mention of an undercover operative. We weren't told, I said quietly. If we had known, spare me, Vince cut me off. You Delta boys always think you're so special, so elite. But you're just men. Men who make mistakes. Deadly mistakes. From inside the hidden room, Cruz called out, Boss, you need to see this. Vince grabbed my arm and shoved me forward. Inside, Cruz was holding a stack of files. Classified operation reports I'd kept against regulations. Force of habit. What's this? Vince asked, taking the files. Mission reports, I admitted. No point lying about what was clearly labeled. Vince flipped through them until he found what he was looking for. Operation Midnight Shield. He scanned the pages, his expression darkening. According to this, you knew there might be an intelligence operative among the hostages, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. It's right here, a footnote from military intelligence. I grabbed the file from him, reading the section he pointed to. He was right. There was, buried in the preliminary intelligence, possibility of friendly asset among hostages. Identity unknown. Proceed with caution. I felt sick. I missed it. In my rush to save the aid workers, I'd overlooked a critical piece of information. James Mercer had died because of my mistake. I never saw this. I whispered, the weight of it crashing down on me. Convenient excuse, Vince sneered, snatching the file back. The great Commander Riley, too busy playing hero to read his own intelligence reports. He was right. It had been my responsibility. My failure. So that's what this is, I said, looking around at the men transforming my farm into a military operation. You're using my farm as a base for what? Killing me wouldn't be enough? Vince chuckled. Oh, you'll die, Commander. But first, you're going to help us. Help you do what? Before he could answer, Tanner burst into the room. Boss, we got company coming up the road. Looks like a woman in a pickup truck. Sarah, my neighbor. She sometimes brought fresh eggs over in the morning. Of all the days to be neighborly. Take care of it, Vince ordered. No witnesses. Wait, I said quickly. She's just a neighbor. She drops by sometimes. If she disappears, people will notice. Vince considered this. Fine, we'll use her. If Riley here doesn't cooperate, the woman dies. Simple enough. He turned to me, his expression cold. You're going to act normal. Tell her everything's fine. Send her away. One wrong word, one signal, and Diesel puts a bullet in her head. Understood. I nodded, my mind already calculating. Sarah was ex-military herself. Army intelligence. She'd recognized something was wrong. I just needed to give her the right signal. Vince and his men marched me back to the house. Through the window, I could see Sarah's old blue pickup coming up the drive. She was still a quarter-mile out. "Remember," Vince said, pressing a gun to my ribs beneath my jacket. "One wrong move, and she dies. Then you die." Slowly, I nodded, my face blank. But inside, I was thinking of the hand signal Sarah and I had developed. A simple gesture that meant danger, call for help. A signal these men wouldn't recognize. Sarah's truck pulled up, and I saw her get out, a basket of eggs in her hands. Her dark hair was pulled back in its usual practical ponytail, her face open and friendly. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. "Morning, Jackson," she called, walking toward the porch. "Brought you some fresh eggs. My hens are laying overtime." I stepped onto the porch, feeling Vince close behind me. "Morning, Sarah. That's real kind of you." She reached the steps, then paused, her smile faltering. Sarah had always been perceptive. Something in my stance, my tone, had alerted her. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes scanning past me to the men inside. "Just fine," I said, taking the basket from her. As our hands met, I gave the signal, 3 quick taps against her wrist. Her eyes widened slightly, but her smile never faltered. "Well, I can't stay," she said smoothly. "Got a million chores waiting. You enjoy those eggs now." She turned to go, moving with deliberate casualness. I watched her drive away, hoping she understood, hoping she'd make the call. "Good job," Vince said when she was gone. "Maybe you'll live through this after all." But as he spoke, I noticed something that turned my blood cold. On Sarah's dashboard had been a newspaper. Today's date clearly visible. May 16th, 2025. Exactly 5 years to the day since Operation Midnight Shield. Since James Mercer died. This wasn't just about revenge. Whatever Vince was planning, today was the day it would happen. And I was the key to his plan. I sat at my kitchen table, hands zip-tied to the chair arms, watching as Vince's men transformed my home into a command center. They'd set up computers, communications equipment, and weapons throughout the house. This was no simple revenge plot. This was something bigger. Vince stood by the window, talking quietly into his satellite phone. "Asset is secured." "Yes, exactly as planned. We'll be ready at 1500 hours. My military instincts were screaming. 1500 hours, 3 p.m. Something was happening then. Something that required my farm, my presence, and a small army of well-equipped men. Cruz approached, carrying a laptop. He set it in front of me, the screen showing a secure video call loading. "Boss wants you to talk to someone," he said, adjusting the screen. The call connected, and I found myself looking at a face I hadn't seen in years. Colonel Victor Hargrove, my former commanding officer. The man who'd sent my team on Operation Midnight Shield. "Hello, Jackson," Hargrove said, his voice exactly as I remembered it. Cold, calculating. "You're looking well for a dead man." I kept my face expressionless. "What's going on, Colonel? You working with these criminals now?" Hargrove smiled thinly. "Criminal is such a subjective term. I prefer to think of us as freelance operatives. The private sector pays much better than the government." The pieces started falling into place. Hargrove had gone off the grid 3 years ago. Rumors had circulated about corruption, selling classified intelligence. I'd never believed them. Until now. So, the Raven Syndicate. I began. My organization, Hargrove confirmed. Built from the ground up with specially selected operatives. Men and women who understand that patriotism doesn't pay the bills. "And what do you want from me?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer. Hargrove leaned closer to the camera. "Access codes, Jackson, to Operation Blacklight." My blood ran cold. Operation Blacklight was the most classified program I'd ever been involved with. A network of sleeper agents embedded in hostile nations around the world. If those codes fell into the wrong hands, dozens of undercover operatives would be exposed. Many would die. "Those codes expired when I retired." I lied smoothly. "They're useless now." Hargrove's smile widened. "We both know that's not true. Blacklight was designed to be compartmentalized. Each commander has permanent access to their cell of agents. Your codes are still active." We checked. I kept my face neutral, but inside my mind was racing. He was right. My access codes were still valid, A design flaw in the system I'd argued against but been overruled on. I've been given lifetime access to protect my agents if something went wrong. Why now? I asked. Why wait 5 years to come after me? We weren't waiting, Vince cut in, moving into view of the camera. We were building, creating the perfect organization. And today, all the pieces are finally in place. Today, I repeated, thinking again of the date. May 16th, Operation Midnight Shield. Very good, Commander, Hargrove said. Today marks 5 years since that operation. 5 years since we discovered a fundamental truth. And what truth is that? That America has grown soft. Hargrove spat, his facade of calm cracking. That we fight with one hand tied behind our backs while our enemies grow stronger. That generals and politicians care more about optics than victory. The fanaticism in his voice chilled me. I'd heard this kind of talk before from men who'd been in combat too long. Men who started to think they knew better than the country they served. So what's your plan? I asked. Expose our agents? For what? Money. Money is just a tool, Hargrove said dismissively. What we want is change. Real change. And sometimes, you have to create chaos before you can build something better. A terror plot. That's what this was. Use my codes to expose undercover agents, creating an international crisis. In the chaos that followed, Hargrove and his Raven Syndicate would step in, offering solutions, taking power. You're insane, I said quietly. This will never work. It already is working, Hargrove replied. All we need are those codes, and you're going to give them to us. I stared back at him, my resolve hardening. Never. Hargrove sighed, as if disappointed. I thought you might say that. Vince, show him our insurance policy. Vince pulled out his phone and showed me a live video feed. My heart stopped. It was Sarah, my neighbor, bound and gagged in what looked like the back of a van. We picked her up half a mile from your farm, Vince said. Did you really think we wouldn't be watching? That little signal you gave her wasn't as subtle as you thought. I lunged forward, nearly toppling the chair despite my restraints. If you hurt her, that's entirely up to you, Hargrove interrupted. Give us the codes, and she walks away unharmed. Refuse, and Vince gets to practice his interrogation techniques. He learned from the best in Afghanistan. The trap was perfect. They'd used my history, my guilt over James Mercer, and now they were using Sarah. An innocent caught in a web I'd created. I need time to think, I said, playing for time. Sarah was tough, but she was still a civilian. And if my guess was right, Hargrove's plan was scheduled for 3 p.m. I had just over 5 hours to stop it. You have 1 hour, Hargrove said coldly. Not a minute more. The screen went black, and Vince closed the laptop. 1 hour to decide if your precious principles are worth that woman's life, he said, leaning close. For what it's worth, I hope you refuse. I owe you pain for what happened to my brother. He walked away, leaving me alone at the table. The house bustled with activity as his men continued their preparations. They'd made one critical mistake, though. They'd left my dogs alive, thinking them ordinary pets. Zeus and Apollo were still in their corner beds, watching and waiting for my command. And if Sarah had understood my signal before she was captured, help might already be on the way. My old team, men who'd sworn to come if I ever needed them, lived less than 30 minutes away. The question was whether they'd get here in time. I tested my restraints subtly. The zip ties were tight, cutting into my wrists. No chance of slipping them. I need another way out. My eyes fell on a kitchen drawer just a few feet away. Inside was a knife sharp enough to cut through the plastic ties. If I could just reach it. But more importantly, I needed a plan. Even if I freed myself, I was outnumbered. And now they had Sarah. Any move I made would put her in danger. Unless I could convince them I was cooperating. Give them fake codes that would seem legitimate at first. Buy enough time for help to arrive, or to find a way to free Sarah. As I considered my options, Diesel walked into the kitchen. The youngest of Vince's crew, he couldn't have been more than 25. He poured himself a cup of coffee, then looked at me with curiosity. Is it true? He asked quietly, checking to make sure no one else was listening. That you were Delta Force? I nodded slowly, studying him. Why? Thinking of enlisting. He snorted. Too late for that. Dishonorable discharge. Got caught selling military equipment on the black market. And now you work for Vince. It's a job, he said with a shrug. Better than flipping burgers. I saw an opening. A potential weak link. You know what they're planning, right? This isn't just about me. They're going to expose undercover agents. People will die. Good people. Doubt flickered across his face. I just do what I'm told. The politics isn't my business. It becomes your business when you're aiding a terror plot. I pressed. That's what this is, Diesel. And the punishment for terrorism is a lot worse than selling stolen equipment. He glanced toward the door nervously. Shut up, old man. You don't know what you're talking about. But I could see I'd rattled him. He wasn't a true believer like Vince. Just a young criminal in over his head. Before I could push further, Cruz entered the room. Boss wants the prisoner in the barn, he told Diesel. Time to turn up the heat. Diesel nodded, setting down his coffee. As Cruz cut my zip ties and hauled me to my feet, I caught Diesel's I won last time. The seed of doubt had been planted. Whether it would grow in time was another question entirely. As they marched me toward the barn, I saw the shadows lengthening across my farm. The clock was ticking. Hargrove's plan was moving forward, and I was running out of options. Blood trickled down my face as Vince landed another punch. My head snapped back, vision blurring. We were in the barn now, away from the busy command center the house had become. Just me, Vince, Cruz, and Diesel. The sound of rain pounding on the metal roof nearly drowned out Vince's heavy breathing. The codes, Commander, Vince demanded, flexing his fingers. This can end whenever you want it to. I spat blood onto the concrete floor. You'll kill me anyway. We both know that. True, Vince admitted with a cold smile. But I can make it quick and painless, or slow and agonizing. Your choice. A sudden crash of thunder shook the barn. The spring storm was getting worse. Through the open barn door, I could see sheets of rain turning my farmyard into mud. Perfect weather for what I had in mind. What about Sarah? I asked, buying time. You let her go, and maybe we can talk about those codes. Vince laughed. You're not in a position to negotiate. But if it makes you feel better, Hargrove's a man of his word. Give us what we want, and the woman lives. I didn't believe him for a second. Sarah had seen their faces. They'd never let her go, but needed to keep Vince talking, keep him focused on me. 40 minutes left, Cruz announced, checking his watch. Hargrove's going to call back soon. Vince nodded. Maybe we should give our guests some motivation. He turned to Diesel. Get the woman from the van. Bring her here. Diesel hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. On it, boss. As he left, I noticed something in his expression. Doubt. Maybe even fear. The seed I'd planted earlier was growing. Good. I need any advantage I could get. Your boy doesn't have the stomach for this, I said to Vince, testing the ropes that bound me to the chair. They were looser than the zip ties had been. Another mistake. Diesel's young. Vince replied dismissively. He'll learn. Or he'll crack. I countered. When this all falls apart, he'll be the first to talk to the feds. Cruz snorted. This won't fall apart. We've been planning it for years. Every plan has a weak link, I said, looking directly at him. In my experience, it's usually the guy who thinks he's second in command. Anger flashed across Cruz's face. He started toward me, but Vince held up a hand to stop him. He's trying to divide us, Vince said. Classic interrogation resistance technique. Don't fall for it. But I'd seen what I needed to see. There was tension between them. Another possible advantage. The barn door slid open, and Diesel returned, pushing Sarah ahead of him. Her hands were bound behind her back, her clothes soaked from the rain. A bruise was forming on her cheek, but her eyes were clear and alert. When she saw me, tied and bloodied, she inhaled sharply. Jackson, she gasped. What is this? What's happening? Sorry you got caught up in this, Sarah, I said, watching her carefully. I needed her to understand what was coming. Vince grabbed her arm roughly. Reunion's over. Now, Riley, the codes. Or I start taking this lady apart piece by piece. Sarah's eyes widened, but I caught the almost imperceptible shift in her stance. She was ex-military intelligence. She knew how to read between the lines. And right now, she was reading my signals perfectly. Okay, I said, slumping in defeat. You win. I'll give you the codes. Vince smiled triumphantly. Wise choice. Cruz, get the laptop. As Cruz left the barn, I locked eyes with Sarah. 3 slow blinks. Our private signal for be ready. She responded with a subtle nod. You're making the right decision, Vince said, loosening his grip on Sarah. Your agents were going to be exposed eventually. At least this way, you get to live a little longer. How often does it work? Diesel asked, curiosity overcoming his caution. These codes, alphanumeric sequence, I explained, keeping my voice defeated. Entered into a specific terminal. Changes the status of deep cover operatives from active to compromised. Standard emergency protocol. Cruz returned with a laptop and set it up in front of me. There, he said, opening a secure browser window. Just like Hargrove said, enter the codes. I stare at the screen. It was exactly as I'd expected. A military secure access portal. Hargrove must have maintained his clearance somehow. Untie my hands, I said. I need to type. Cruz looked at Vince, who nodded. As Cruz bent to untie me, I caught a glimpse of movement outside the barn door. Just a shadow, but it was enough. My heart raced. Someone was out there. My prayers had been answered. My old team had come, but they didn't know about Sarah or the complex situation inside. I needed to warn them somehow, to let them know the barn was the priority target, not the house. As Cruz finished untying my hands, I rubbed my wrists, making a show of the pain. These codes are long, I said loudly. 40 character sequences. 8 of them. Will take a few minutes to enter correctly. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. She understood. I was stalling, giving whoever was outside time to understand the situation and organize. I placed my fingers on the keyboard and began typing slowly. Random characters, nothing that would actually work. But look convincing. Hurry up, Vince snapped. We don't have all day. A flash of lightning illuminated the barn, followed immediately by a deafening crash of thunder. The lights flickered, then went out completely. In that instant of darkness, I moved. I flipped the table, sending the laptop crashing into Vince. I heard Sarah drop to the ground, just as we trained for situations like this. Zeus! Apollo! Attack! I shouted at the top of my lungs, hoping my dogs were close enough to hear through the storm. Gunfire erupted outside. My team was making their move. But inside the dark barn, I was fighting for my life. I tackled Cruz as he reached for his weapon, driving him into the ground. We grappled in the darkness, each fighting for control. He was younger, stronger, but I had decades of hand-to-hand combat experience. I knew exactly where to strike. One sharp blow to his throat, and he went limp beneath me. I grabbed his gun just as the emergency lights kicked on, casting an eerie red glow throughout the barn. Vince was on his feet, gun aimed at Sarah's head. Diesel stood frozen by the door, his own weapon drawn, but pointing at the floor. Drop it, Riley, Vince shouted over the storm. Or she dies right now. Outside, the gunfire was intensifying. My team was engaging Vince's men around the house. But in here, we were a stalemate. It's over, Vince, I said, keeping Cruz's gun trained on him. That's Delta Force out there. Your men don't stand chance. For the first time, I saw fear in Vince's eyes, but it quickly hardened into resolve. Then we all die here, starting with her. His finger tightened on the trigger. In that split second, something unexpected happened. Diesel raised his gun and fired. Not at me, but at Vince. The bullet caught Vince in the shoulder, spinning him around. His shot went wild, hitting the wall instead of Sarah. I didn't waste the opportunity. I fired twice, center mass. Vince fell backwards, eyes wide with shock. I turned to Diesel, who stood with his gun, now hanging limply at his side. I didn't sign up for terrorism, he said quietly. Or killing women. Before I could respond, the barn door burst open. 2 men in tactical gear rushed in, weapons raised. I recognized them immediately. Martinez and Jackson from my old Delta team. Commander, Martinez shouted, taking in the scene. Secure. Not yet, I said, moving to untie Sarah. Hargrove's still in play, and he's expecting those codes within the next 20 minutes. The rain pounded against the windows of my farmhouse as Martinez set up the secure satellite link. My living room had been transformed into an impromptu command center, but this time, it was filled with friendly faces. 6 members of my old Delta unit had responded to Sarah's call, arriving just in time. Perimeter secure, Taylor reported, entering through the front door. Rainwater dripped from his tactical gear onto my hardwood floor. 4 tangos down, 3 captured. No sign of Hargrove or any other leadership. I nodded, pressing an ice pack to my swollen jaw. They wouldn't be here. Hargrove's too smart for that. He's running this remotely. Sarah sat beside me on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Despite her ordeal, she looked composed, alert. Military training never really leaves you. How did you know to call my team? I asked her. I didn't, she admitted. When I saw those men at your farm, I called an old contact from my Army intelligence days. Turns out he knew your former XO, Martinez. Small world. Martinez looked up from the computer. Link's almost ready. What's the play here, Commander? I considered our options. Hargrove would be calling any minute, expecting those codes. When he didn't get them, he'd implement whatever backup plan he had in place. We needed to stay one step ahead. We give him what he wants, I said, or at least what he thinks he wants. Martinez raised an eyebrow. Fake codes. I shook my head. He's too smart for that. He'll verify them immediately. I turned to Diesel, who sat under guard in the corner. What exactly did Hargrove tell you about today's operation? Diesel looked up nervously. Just that we needed to secure you and get some access codes. Then at 1500 hours, something big was going down. Something that would change everything. Did he mention any other locations? Other teams. Diesel thought for a moment. Once, I heard Vince talking about a second team in Washington. That's all I know, I swear. Washington. That narrowed it down, but not enough. What was Hargrove planning? The satellite phone on the table rang, cutting through my thoughts. Everyone in the room tensed. It's time, Martinez said grimly. I picked up the phone. Riley. Commander. Hargrove's cold voice came through clearly. Your hour is up. Do you have my codes? I switched the call to speakerphone so everyone could hear. I do. But before I give them to you, I want confirmation that Sarah will be released unharmed. Hargrove chuckled. Always the honorable soldier. Fine. Put Vince on the line. Vince is dead, I said flatly. So are most of his men. My old team paid us a visit. A long pause. I could almost hear Hargrove recalculating. Unfortunate, he finally said, but not unexpected. Vince's vendetta made him sloppy. But it doesn't change your situation, Jackson. You will still give me those codes, or other innocent people will die. What people? I demanded. What are you planning, Victor? Insurance policies, Hargrove replied cryptically. Contingencies. I've learned from my military career to always have multiple angles of attack. You have 5 minutes to transmit those codes, or blood will be on your hands. The line went dead. I looked around at my team, all watching me intently. He's bluffing, Taylor suggested. Martinez shook his head. No, that's not Hargrove's style. If he says he has contingencies, he does. Washington, I murmured, thinking aloud. Today's date. 5 years since Operation Midnight Shield. I stood up suddenly. The memorial service. Sarah looked confused. What memorial service? 5 years ago today, we lost 3 men in Operation Midnight Shield. I explained, pacing despite my injuries. Every year, there's a memorial service at Arlington. For the families. Martinez's eyes widened in understanding. And today's the 5-year anniversary. It will be bigger, special, with high-ranking officials present, I continued. Maybe even the Secretary of Defense. The perfect target for a man who thinks America has gone soft on its enemies. I turned to Sarah. Your intelligence contacts. Can you get us information on security for today's events at Arlington? She was already reaching for her phone. On it, the satellite phone rang again. I answered immediately. For minutes, Commander, Hargrove said without preamble. I need proof that your contingencies are real, I countered. Or no codes. A pause. Check your email. Martinez typed rapidly on the laptop. Got it. Video file. He opened it, and we all crowded around to see. The footage showed a crowded memorial service at Arlington National Cemetery. The angle suggested a hidden camera. In the frame were several high-ranking military officials, family members of fallen soldiers, and, at the podium, the Secretary of Defense. The camera then panned down to show a device hidden beneath a seat. A bomb. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. 3 minutes, Commander, Hargrove said coldly. The codes, or that bomb detonates. My mind raced. If I gave him the real codes, dozens of undercover operatives would be compromised. Many would die. If I refused, everyone at that memorial service would die, including families of my fallen comrades. I need to verify this is live footage, I said, stalling. Show me something that proves this is happening right now. Always the suspicious one, Hargrove sighed. Very well. A moment later, another video came through. Same location, but now the camera zoomed in on a newspaper being held by an attendee. Today's date clearly visible. 2 minutes, Hargrove reminded me. I muted the phone and turned to my team. Options. Give him fake codes, Taylor suggested again. He'll know immediately, Martinez countered, and detonate the bomb. My contact says security at Arlington is already on high alert, Sarah reported, covering her phone. There was a threat called in this morning. They're doing sweeps, but the service is still proceeding. 1 minute, Commander. Hargrove's voice came through the speaker. I unmuted the phone. I'm sending the codes now, I said, nodding to Martinez to type what I dictated. Alpha Tango 947 Zulu. I recited a sequence of characters from memory. Not the real blacklight codes, but something that would look legitimate to Hargrove systems. A trace program embedded in the military security protocols. It would give us Hargrove's location within minutes. Codes received, Hargrove confirmed. Now we'll see if you've played fair, Commander. The bomb, I reminded him. Disarm it. Now. Patience, Hargrove replied smoothly. First, we verify your codes. My heart pounded as we waited. If Hargrove saw through my deception too quickly, everyone at that service would die. If the trace program worked as designed, we'd have a chance to stop him before he realized the codes were fake. Interesting, Hargrove finally said. The system is accepting your input. Preliminary validation looks good. I exhaled slowly, careful not to show relief. The trace program was working. Now about that bomb, I pressed. A man of honor after all, Hargrove said, almost sounding impressed. Very well. Another video feed appeared on the laptop. The same hidden camera, but now showing someone, presumably one of Hargrove's men, discreetly removing the device from under the seat. Satisfied? Hargrove asked. Not until everyone at that service is safe, I replied firmly. They will be. I'm not a monster, Jackson. Just a realist. Sometimes hard choices must be made for the greater good. Martinez caught my attention, holding up the laptop screen so only I could see it. A message from Military Cyber Command. Trace successful. Location identified. Strike team dispatched. I allowed myself a small smile. You know what your problem is, Victor? You always underestimated my team. What are you talking about? Hargrove's voice held the first hint of uncertainty. Those codes I gave you, they're a trace program. Special forces are probably kicking in your door right about now. A long silence. Then, you're bluffing. Am I? You taught me yourself. Always have a contingency plan. The sound of distant shouting came through the phone, followed by what could only be gunfire. This isn't over, Jackson, Hargrove hissed. Those agents of yours? They're still compromised. I sent the kill orders before you even called. My blood ran cold. You're lying. Am I? Check your secure networks. The damage is already done. The line went dead. I looked up at Martinez, who was already accessing the blacklight system through his secure terminal. He's bluffing, Martinez said after a moment. System shows all agents still secure. Relief washed over me. Give me General Hadley at command. We need to make sure that bomb at Arlington is really disarmed. As Martinez made the call, I sank onto the couch, the adrenaline finally wearing off. Sarah put a hand on my shoulder. It's over, she asked quietly. I thought about Hargrove, about Vince and his brother James, about all the threads that had led to this day. Not entirely, I said honestly. Men like Hargrove always have one more card to play. The satellite phone rang again. Martinez and I exchanged glances before I answered. Riley, Commander, came a voice I didn't recognize. This is Captain Reeves, Delta Force. We've secured Hargrove's location. He's in custody. I should have felt relieved. Instead, a sense of unease persisted. Any computers or devices there? All seized. We're bringing in cyber teams now. Be careful, I warned. Hargrove claimed he sent kill orders to compromised agents before you got to him. Roger that, Reeves replied. We'll handle it with extreme caution. I ended the call and looked around my living room, at my old team, at Sarah, at the captured member of Hargrove's crew. My peaceful retirement suddenly felt very far away. "What now, Commander?" Martinez asked, the old respect evident in his voice. I stood up, ignoring the pain from my injuries. "Now we make sure it's really over. I want those Arlington security teams to double-check for any additional devices. And I want direct confirmation that all Blacklight agents are secure." As my team moved to carry out my orders, I walked to the window and looked out at my farm. The rain was beginning to ease, sunlight breaking through the clouds. But the damage was evident everywhere: bullet holes in the walls, tire tracks tearing up the fields, blood staining the ground. This place had been my refuge, my attempt at a quiet life after years of war. Now it had become a battlefield again. Because of me, because of secrets I'd kept and a past that refused to stay buried. Sarah joined me at the window. "You can rebuild," she said softly, "when this is all over." I nodded, but I wasn't sure I believed it. Men like Hargrove, men like me, we never truly leave the war behind. We just bring it home with us, one way or another. Glass shattered somewhere in the dark house as I moved like a shadow through my own home. Blood trickled down my forehead from where Vince had struck me, but the pain only sharpened my focus. This was my territory. Every loose floorboard, every corner, every hiding spot, I knew them all. "Find him." Vince's voice boomed from the living room. How hard can it be to catch one old man? I crouched in the hallway closet, listening to their heavy footsteps. My fingers found the hidden switch behind the coats. With a soft click, the back panel slid open, revealing a narrow passage I'd built between the walls. Most people thought my renovation hobby was just to keep busy after the war. They were wrong. "Diesel, check upstairs," Vince ordered. "Mac, take the kitchen. Cruz is still down in that hole. Someone get a light and check if he's alive." I slipped into the passage and pulled the panel shut just as Diesel walked past. Through tiny holes I drilled in the walls, I could see parts of each room. Diesel stomped up the stairs, guns swinging wildly. Poor training. No discipline. These weren't soldiers, just bullies with weapons. In my bedroom, I watched Diesel kick open the door and point his gun under the bed. He stepped into the middle of the room, right onto the pressure plate I'd installed beneath the carpet. Sleeping gas hissed from vents in the ceiling, a non-lethal mixture I'd saved from my military days. Diesel coughed, spun around confused, then dropped to the floor. "One down." "Diesel," Matt called from downstairs. "You find anything?" When no answer came, he cursed. "Tanner, go check on Diesel." Perfect. They were separating themselves. I moved through the passage to the kitchen section. Through the peephole, I saw Mac rifling through my drawers, pocketing anything that looked valuable. He yanked open the refrigerator, grabbing a beer like he owned the place. I slid open another hidden panel, this one leading behind the pantry door. As Mac popped the beer cap and took a long drink, I emerged silently behind him. One quick move, arm around his neck, pressure on the carotid artery, and he went limp in seconds. I caught him before he hit the ground and made a noise. "Two down." Upstairs, I heard Tanner calling for Diesel. "Dude, quit messing around." "Where are you?" I dragged Mac to the basement door, zip-tied his hands and feet, and gagged him with a kitchen towel. The storm outside grew stronger, rain now hammering against the windows, wind howling through the trees. Thunder crashed, masking the sound of my movements. "Vince!" Tanner yelled, panic edging into his voice. "Something's wrong up here. Diesel's out cold, and I can't wake him." "What are you talking about?" Vince shouted back. I moved to the living room peephole. Vince stood by the fireplace, his scarred face illuminated by the flashlight he held. The power was still out, my doing. The fifth outlaw, a man they called Rooster, nervously paced by the window, jumping at every lightning flash. "I'm telling you, man," Tanner called from upstairs. "Something weird is going on." "Get down here, both of you," Vince ordered. "Bring Diesel." I watched as Tanner struggled to drag Diesel's unconscious body down the stairs. This was my chance. I moved quickly through the passage to the entry hall, where another hidden door led to a small space under the staircase. As Tanner reached the bottom step, I triggered the mechanism I'd installed. The stair beneath him dropped 6 inches, not enough to create a hole, but enough to make him stumble. As he fell forward, still holding Diesel, I burst from my hiding place. Before he could regain his balance, I struck, quick and precise, at the pressure points in his neck. Tanner dropped alongside Diesel, both now unconscious at the foot of the stairs. 3 and 4 down. Tanner! Vince shouted, running toward the entryway with Rooster close behind. I slipped back into the shadows beneath the staircase, pulling the panel closed just as they rounded the corner. What the hell? Vince knelt beside his fallen men. His eyes darted around the dark house. Rooster, this isn't right. The old man's got this place rigged somehow. Rooster's face was pale in the flashlight beam. Maybe we should get out of here, boss. Come back with more men. No one's leaving. Vince snarled, grabbing Rooster's jacket. We came for the land, and we're taking it. The syndicate doesn't back down. Split up, find him. They separated, Vince heading toward my study, Rooster moving toward the kitchen. I tracked Rooster first. He was the weaker one, jumping at shadows. When thunder cracked overhead and rain pounded harder on the roof, Rooster fired his gun reflexively at nothing, the bullet embedding in my kitchen wall. Jumpy, aren't you? I said from behind him. He whirled around, but it was too late. One quick strike to his solar plexus doubled him over, unable to breathe. A second hit to the back of his neck, and he joined his friends in unconsciousness. 5 down. Only Vince remained. I found him in my study, rifling through my desk drawers. The beam of his flashlight passed over military commendations on the wall, newspaper clippings of classified missions that somehow made the press, and finally settled on a photograph of my old unit. I know you're in here, Vince called out, his voice steadier than I expected. You've got skills, old man. I'll give you that. I stood in the doorway. You were soldiers once, I said, startling him. He spun around, gun aimed at my chest. Mercenaries now, he replied with a grim smile. Not so different from you. His words hit harder than expected. We are nothing alike, I insisted. You prey on the innocent. And what did you do in all those countries, Commander? His finger tightened on the trigger. You think those people saw any difference between your uniform and my gang colors? For a moment, old doubts resurfaced. Faces of civilians caught in crossfire, villages emptied by our operations, children who grew up knowing only war. Then I heard vehicles approaching in the distance, distinctive engine, sounds I would recognize anywhere. My team's coming, I said quietly. Your operation is over. Your team. Vince laughed. You're alone, old man. No one's coming to save you. I smiled for the first time that night. I was never alone. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room and the subtle red that now danced on Vince's chest. His eyes widened as he realized a sniper scope was trained on him from outside. Ow! My neighbor Sarah, I explained. She called them hours ago. I've been keeping you busy until they arrived. Vince lunged forward in desperation, but I was ready. 20 years of combat flooded back into my muscles. I sidestepped his attack, grabbed his gun arm, and in one fluid motion, disarmed him and pinned him to the floor. As headlights swept across the windows and car doors slammed outside, Vince struggled beneath my knee. You're dead, Riley, he growled. The syndicate will burn this place to the ground. I leaned closer. Then I'll have to make sure there's no syndicate left. Sunlight broke through the clouds as the last police car pulled away from my driveway. The storm had passed, leaving behind puddles that reflected the blue and red emergency lights. I sat on my porch steps, the wooden boards creaking beneath me, my body feeling every one of my 53 years. 6 outlaw gang members were now in custody, but their threats still echoed in my ears. Still drinking that same awful coffee, Commander? I looked up to see Martinez crossing my muddy yard. My former second-in-command hadn't changed much in the 3 years since I'd retired. Still built like a tank, still sporting that ridiculous mustache. Behind him, 4 other members of my old Delta Force unit secured the perimeter of my property, checking for any outlaws we might have missed. It's grown on me, I replied, holding on my mug. My hand trembled slightly, the adrenaline crash hitting me hard. Martinez sat beside me, pulling out a flask and pouring something stronger into my coffee. Doctor's orders, he said with a grin. I took a sip and winced. How fast did you drive to get here? Broke several laws. Martinez shrugged. Sarah called us right after she saw them break in. We were at Jenkins' wedding in Oak Ridge, about 2 hours away. Would have been here sooner, but the storm washed out the bridge on County Road 16. I nodded toward the men checking my property. Pulled them from the reception too? They volunteered. Nobody messes with our commander. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun climb higher. Parts of my fence were broken where the outlaws' trucks had crashed through. The front door hung from one hinge. At least 3 windows were shattered. They're not going to stop, I said quietly. The Raven Syndicate doesn't forgive. Martinez nodded solemnly. Then we'll be ready. I stared across my damaged farm. The fields I'd carefully tended for 3 years were now rutted with tire tracks. The barn door had been kicked in. Even my scarecrow stood at an odd angle, as if it had tried to fight back and lost. I thought I left all this behind. I said, more to myself than to Martinez. Thought I could just be a farmer. Some men aren't built for peace, Commander. I glanced sharply at him. Everyone's built for peace. Some of us just never get the chance to find out. Officer Taylor, a young local cop who'd responded to Sarah's 911 call, approached with his notebook open. Mr. Riley, we've got statements from everyone except you. When you're ready, I need to know exactly what happened here. I exchanged looks with Martinez. The official report would need to omit certain details, the hidden passages, the traps, the military-grade sleeping gas. Some things were better left unexplained. They broke in. I defended myself. I said simply. Taylor frowned. And somehow subdued 6 armed men by yourself? I got lucky, I replied. Luck had nothing to do with it, Martinez muttered. Taylor looked like he wanted to ask more questions, but an older officer called him away. We'll need a more detailed statement later, Mr. Riley, Taylor said before leaving. Sarah appeared at my gate, carrying a basket covered with a checkered cloth. Her young son, Tommy, trailed behind her, eyes wide as he took in the police cars and strange men with military posture. I brought breakfast, Sarah announced, climbing the porch steps. Figured you boys might be hungry. Martinez stood immediately, taking the basket from her with exaggerated gratitude. I couldn't help but notice the way his eyes lingered on her face. Some things never changed. You saved my life, Sarah, I told her as she sat beside me. Thank you. She shook her head. I just made a phone call. You're the one who fought off a gang of outlaws. Tommy, 8 years old and fearless, sidled up to me. Did you really fight bad guys, Mr. Riley? I ruffled his hair. Sometimes the stories grown-ups tell get bigger than what really happened. But Mom said you were a hero soldier before you moved here, Tommy insisted. She said you got medals and everything. I caught Sarah's eye, and she blushed slightly. Tommy, why don't you go see if that nice officer wants a muffin, she suggested. The boy ran off happily on his mission. Been telling stories about me? I asked. Just the ones everyone knows, she replied. The newspaper articles, the ceremony when you got the Medal of Honor. This community's proud to have you, Jack. Even if you do prefer to be left alone. Before I could respond, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. The man who stepped out wore a suit that screamed federal government. Here we go, Martinez mumbled, stepping protectively closer to Sarah and me. The man approached, flashing a badge. Agent Dawson, FBI. We've been tracking the Raven Syndicate for months. Seems like you stirred up quite a hornet's nest, Commander Riley. Just defending my home, I said cautiously. Well, your defense just handed us 6 members of one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. Agent Dawson surveyed my damaged property. But I'm afraid you've also made yourself their #1 target. My stomach tightened. Not for my own safety, but for Sarah's, for Tommy's, for everyone else in this small community I'd grown to care about. The men you captured have already started talking, Dawson continued. Seems they weren't just here to intimidate a local farmer. They were setting up a major distribution hub for their operation. Your land is perfectly positioned, remote enough for privacy, but close to state lines for quick transport. Martinez tensed beside me. What are you suggesting? Dawson straightened his tie. We've been trying to infiltrate the syndicate for years without success. Now we have a unique opportunity. I already knew what was coming. You want to use my farm as bait. I want to use you as an asset, Dawson corrected. Your background makes you uniquely qualified. And frankly, whether you help us or not, they're coming back for revenge. The question is whether you'll face them alone or with the full resources of the federal government behind you. Sarah grabbed my hand. Jack, you don't have to do this. You've done enough. I looked at my farm, the home I'd built hoping to find peace. Then at Sarah, at Tommy playing nearby, and my old team standing ready as always. If I help you, I said slowly to Dawson, I have conditions. My team is involved. The local community stays safe. Dawson nodded. We can work with that. Martinez clapped my shoulder. Just like old times, Commander? I shook my head. No, this time we're fighting on home ground. And this time, we finish it for good. As Sarah squeezed my hand tighter, I realized the truth I've been avoiding for 3 years. I never really left the war behind. I just brought it home with me. But now, that might be exactly what was needed to keep this community safe. I stood up, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders once more. My peaceful retirement would have to wait, but this time, I wasn't fighting for some distant political objective. I was fighting for a home worth protecting. Let's get started, I told Dawson. The syndicate thinks they know who I am. It's time to show them they have no idea.